You learned emotional control early, not because someone taught you how, but because you had to. You learn when to stay quiet, when to swallow reactions, when to keep your face still, your voice even, your needs invisible. You learned that emotions were dangerous when expressed freely. That anger caused consequences. That sadness made you a burden. That joy invited disappointment. So you adapted. And now people describe you as calm, collected, mature, emotionally intelligent. But inside, something feels tight, like you're always holding a door shut, a door behind which your real reactions live. Here is the paradox that defines your inner life. The emotional control that once kept you safe is now the very thing preventing you from feeling alive. You don't explode. You don't fall apart. You don't lose control. But you also don't fully relax. You don't fully receive. You don't fully express. You're regulated, but not free. And no one ever told you that emotional control has laws. Unspoken rules that determine whether control becomes power or quiet self-erasure. This video is about the 3 laws of emotional control you were never taught. Not productivity slogans, not stoicism for performance, but the kind that decide whether control becomes self-mastery or self-betrayal. True emotional control is not suppression. It is not numbness. It is not endurance. But most people were taught a counterfeit version. Let's start with the nervous system. When a child grows up in an emotionally unpredictable environment, where moods shift without warning, where love feels conditional, where conflict feels unsafe, the nervous system adapts through hypervigilance. Hypervigilance isn't just anxiety. It's a body trained to scan constantly for emotional threat. Your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, becomes overactive. Your default mode network becomes dominated by self-monitoring. You don't just feel emotions. You evaluate them in real time. Is this safe to express? Is this too much? Will this cost me connection? This creates emotional inhibition, the chronic suppression of expression to avoid danger. Often, this pairs with parentification. You became the calm one, the reasonable one, the low-maintenance one. You regulated the emotional room before you learned to regulate yourself. And over time, this became an identity. But here's what no one tells you. Control rooted in fear is not regulation. It is containment. Imagine holding water by clenching your fists. Yes, you prevent the spill, but you lose the ability to touch, feel, or use the water. That's what emotional control becomes when it's built on survival. There is a specific grief that comes with this archetype. Not the grief of something lost suddenly, but the grief of something never allowed to fully exist. You were rewarded for being composed, praised for being understanding, admired for being strong, but no one asked what that strength cost you. Carl Jung warned that the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents. But there is another burden just as heavy, the unlived emotional life of the self. When control becomes identity, authenticity is traded for belonging. You learn, being acceptable is safer than being honest. Being stable is better than being real. Being needed is more reliable than being known. The core fear underneath all of this is not rejection. It's exposure. Exposure means someone might see your intensity, your dependency, your anger, your need. So joy becomes moderated. Desire becomes intellectualized. Pain becomes private. Even rest feels unsafe. Celebration feels undeserved. Asking for help feels dangerous. Kierkegaard called this despair, not wanting to be oneself or not daring to be. And it doesn't look dramatic. It looks functional, successful, quietly exhausted. This pattern matures with you. In relationships, you are emotionally stable, but hard to reach. You listen deeply, but share selectively. You regulate the connection, not the intimacy. You often attract emotionally unavailable partners, not because you want distance, but because distance feels familiar. You become the safe place for others while quietly starving to be held yourself. In your career, you're reliable, competent, consistent, but you hesitate to self-advocate. You wait to be noticed instead of naming your value. In boundaries, you say it's fine when it isn't. You absorb stress that isn't yours. You feel guilty for needing space. Internally, you struggle to rest without justification. Stillness feels unsafe. Productivity becomes worthiness. Here is the reframe that changes everything. These are not personality traits. They are coping strategies. They were intelligent responses to emotional risk. Healing doesn't mean abandoning control. It means changing its foundation. Law 1. Control without safety creates numbness. Your nervous system must learn that expression does not equal danger. This is where inner child reparenting begins, responding to your own emotions with curiosity instead of correction. Law 2. Suppressed emotion doesn't disappear. It relocates. Unexpressed feelings become anxiety, tension, fatigue, resentment. This is where shadow work matters, allowing anger, grief, desire, and vulnerability to exist without immediately managing them. Law 3. True control is choice, not suppression. The goal isn't to feel less. It's to feel without fear, to speak before you're ready, to ask even when your voice shakes, to let your emotional world take up space. Healing is not loud. It's not dramatic. It's the quiet courage of choosing softness over vigilance. You were never meant to be perfectly controlled. You were meant to be integrated. Your emotional depth is not a weakness. Your sensitivity is not a flaw. The only thing that ever hurt you was being taught that your inner world was something to manage rather than honor. And it never was. If this resonated, share it with someone who learned to survive by staying composed. Subscribe, not to be fixed, but to remember who you were before control became a cage. Because emotional mastery isn't about never breaking. It's about finally allowing yourself to be whole.